I thank you for joining us this afternoon, and I think that by now the letter that was dispatched by the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, dated the 19th of March 2019, to His Excellency the President, is a matter of public notoriety. I will ask my colleagues on either side, starting with Commissioner Robeson-Ben and then Commissioner Bibi Shadick, to give an opening statement.
As was said by Commissioner Says Ganraj, at today's statutory meeting of the Guyana Elections Commission, we were first told that the meeting was a continuation of a meeting which was held on the 14th of March, which we disputed. And while we were discussing that, we noticed this letter which was at our places, in which it was evident that the chairman of the commission, Justice Retired Patterson, had written a letter to His Excellency David Granger, the President. And if you go to the penultimate paragraph of that letter, which I shared out copies, he says, I would proffer that the Commission would be in a position to conduct general and regional elections no earlier than late November 2019, with an official list of electors having a qualifying date of the 31st of October 2019. We on this side naturally walked out at that point. And in so doing, the question we pose and the issue which we've always had with this position arising out of GECOM, which we warned about would arise somehow in the delays which we felt were being engineered in GECOM, and perhaps with the collusion of agencies and persons outside of GECOM, perhaps too in the government or in political organizations outside, that there was an attempt to delay the elections, and that any delay of elections which were founded in the no-confidence vote of December 2018 would be unconstitutional and would be illegal. And that the Guyana Elections Commission, which had immediately on the following day after the passage of the no-confidence motion, had started work meetings in respect of providing the work plans for having those elections within the 90 days time frame mandated by the Constitution, was somehow forced to abandon its mission, its tasks, its duties in respect of having those elections. You're aware that over the last 2 months at least, we have had a dispute going where a gulf existed between two positions. One position seemingly was founded clearly in the constitutional imperatives arising from the no-confidence motion. Basically, that elections should be held in 90 days. And the other position, which emerged much later clearly, was a demand that there should be house-to-house registration before elections could be held. And we were told for us that while there was a position that elections could have been held maybe in 90 days, then 105 days preparation, and then 148 days, which emerged from the chief election officer in the Kaieteur News before we were aware. Then we heard the drumbeat that it can only be after house-to-house registration from the other side of the table at the Guyana Elections Commission. We want to unequivocally state here again that we reject the adoption of a position which forces us into ignoring the constitutional imperatives, the Constitution itself in relation to this matter. And that the fact that the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission can write this letter without having it discussed and having written the letter and dispatched it, without it having it discussed and democratically arrived at, criticized or not, at the Guyana Elections Commission, clearly shows that he thinks he is running a courtroom and that the commission is not there to serve the people as it is required in a democratic fashion, and that the decisions, the method of the decisions by which the commission comes to agreements or non-agreements on issues, there's no need for the commission, as it were. The chairman could write a letter. He could state, strangely enough, in the letter here, that the lucid contributions to the debates by all of our commissioners and the evident majority views which were easily discernible, that is in the 4th paragraph on the front page. So according to him, a majority view was clearly discernible, and somehow, with him sitting there as chairman, it was not possible to put that majority view and to have it pass to let us have progress in this matter. We were aware, I think too, as the British High Commissioner was saying all the time, that the clock was running down, deliberately so in our view. But we know that in the Constitution, the resort to resolving that issue was to have a meeting of the National Assembly to have additional time in relation to having more time for the preparations for election, that the National Assembly had to meet, and by way of a 2/3 majority of all the members present, that issues of time could be resolved. So it appears to us, in the first instance, that this was all planned from a long time ago, and that since we are 2 days or so away from the difficult and critical date of the 21st of March, that perhaps it is expected that this letter would have emerged, and to steamroll and to force the country and to advise the president, perhaps with or without his knowledge, that these things which are written out here were agreed to and have to be done. In my view, this letter is clearly improper in terms of the process at the commission, or any commission. It is illegal in view of the constitutional duty of the chairman and the commissioners, based on their duty, which they swore to, or we swore to uphold our Constitution without fear and favor, and that this letter could not and should not be allowed to stand. It could not and should not be allowed to stand. It is a clear violation of the constitutional imperatives or mandate as commissioners of GECOM to uphold the Constitution, and it is clearly intended to have a situation which will put us into the crisis which has often been spoken of. I want to, perhaps if I go on to one point, in the 4th paragraph, the chairman writes, the process has been continuously frustrated by the withdrawal of some commissioners from our official meetings. I think Commissioner Shadi clearly stated, and we've all stated, that we will not sit there and be in violation of the Constitution and of the duty which we swore dare to uphold. There is the suggestion here, naturally, arising out of the intent of this document, that the monies which were appropriated in the Parliament and which should have been given 30 days after the passage of the national budget completely to the Elections Commission to carry out its functions as it prioritizes according to what the Minister of Finance said in the budget debate relating to the Guyana Elections Commission, that there's a clear intention to do house-to-house registration, then do elections, all of which would take us into the end of the year, or perhaps February next year, as was perhaps suggested at one point or the other. I want to pass on further discussions or presentations to the other two commissioners on our side, and would be open to questions from you all as we go on.
Thank you, Rosen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I begin from the 12th of March, when a statutory meeting of GECOM was called. And at that meeting, there was no plan, there was no election plan. Nothing to talk about elections. So, we left. They called us on the Thursday, which was the 14th of March, last Thursday, and said that they were calling us to discuss a plan that I had proffered to the president when we went to the meeting that gives an election timeline of 50 days, which I think we shared with the press. But when we arrived there, it turns out that they really weren't going to discuss this. This was just for Mr. Alexander to say, well, this can't work, this can't work, this can't work, so we got to do house-to-house registration. So as soon as they decided to start talking, but before all of that, one of the commissioners, Corbyn, started to say that they wanted to have, because the president had asked for financial needs, and that any election plan must be costed. So, and I agreed. But my insistence was that the election plan that I had proffered should be the one to be costed, because there was no other plan. And if this was a plan that was going to make the time shorter, then it probably will cost more. So if normally their election cost $2 billion, and we got to shorten the time, so we have to spend more money, then it can probably cost $5 billion. But it has to be a plan that is being costed. We had objections to that. Commissioner Corbyn wanted to have a sum of money before he decided to discuss the plan that I had proffered. And I was saying, no, you are either going to cost this or not put a cost at all, because what are you costing? You don't have another plan. There's no plan you have. So what are you costing? So there and then, Commissioner Alexander decided that he wanted to say something, and then he started to talk about, he doesn't agree with this, he doesn't agree, and he starts to talk about house-to-house registration, and goes on to move a motion that we must say at the commission, because this is what we understood from the meeting with the president, that we were called there to be coerced into making a decision, and from the mouth of Mr. Harmon, he doesn't care if it's a majority decision, but it must be a decision, which means they know that 4 people are going to vote and say that's a majority decision. They wanted a decision, and the decision they wanted to come out of the commission was that the GECOM would move to house-to-house registration and have an election after that. So there was no way we were going to do that. So when they started talking about their motion and so on, and very quickly Trotman said, I second. So I got up right away and I said, I'm sorry, I don't care who second, who third, but I'm going to be no part of that discussion. Because if there's a motion on the floor, we will have to have a discussion. And I'm going to be no part of that discussion. And so we opted to leave. Lo and behold, after that meeting, those commissioners came out and Commissioner Trotman told the press that there had been a vote, that there had been a vote in process and 3 people had already voted. And what we did was tantamount to abstaining from the vote. This was reported in the press. And that is pure, that's a lie. I like to call what it is. It was a lie. And the minutes of the meeting that they gave us today showed that there was no vote. So what he went and told the press, like what Mr. Alexander told the press the previous Tuesday, was untrue. But they keep doing this. So there was no majority decision on anything. So the chairman now takes it into his hands, and this letter, if anybody has written a letter the chairman has written, this is not the chairman's language. I don't know who wrote this, but this is not the chairman. The chairman writes very strange language. This is not his language. And this letter here, and what is amazing in this letter, well, as Robeson pointed out, how they were coming to the evident majority views were easily discernible, and pivotal decisions which should have flowed proved elusive because the process was continuously frustrated by withdrawal of the commissioners. There was only one, for 2 meetings before, we walked out because there was no elections planned. And last Thursday we walked out because they were going to talk about house-to-house registration, and we said, no way, we're not doing that. So the only decision that the chairman could be referring to was a decision to have house-to-house registration before the elections. That could not be called having elections in the shortest possible time, especially in view of the fact that Commissioner Alexander kept saying February after that. Now I'm reading this letter, and he is telling the president, I'm also advised by the Chief Elections Officer, and this is on the 2nd page, the 4th paragraph down. I'm also advised by the Chief Elections Officer that given all current considerations, an amount of $3.5 billion is required. So from $2 billion for ordinary elections now, it has gone to $3.5 billion. And their plan is to hold it after holding house-to-house registration, for which they have $3.5 billion. So that money is there. So what is this $3.5 billion for? Nobody can, this inflated kind of $1.5 billion more than $2 billion that is normally used. It says, kindly note that significant critical path activities, and those words are never James Patterson's words, associated with elections cannot commence prior to the availability of these funds. So in other words, they can't start to advertise for people to train. They can't do anything. This money has to go. And then he says, no election should be contemplated less than 5 months after these funds are placed at the disposal of GECOM. Now, this is a chairman asking for $3.5 billion extra to 5.371 billion that they got, that was appropriated, but never disbursed to GECOM, contrary to law. It has not yet been disbursed. According to CEO, every quarter they have to request. And that's not for constitutional agencies. Constitutional agencies should have all their money. Now, they haven't received the 5.37 billion that was appropriated, and here they're asking for 3.5 billion and saying that on the date you give us this money, then we can have elections 5 months after that. Now, all of this is saying to me and to people who know what is going on, that these elections are never going to be held. They're not going to get this money, and so they're not going to have, the 5 months is never going to start, and so the 5 months is never going to end. And then he says, now this is the part that I've been arguing, the next paragraph to this. Second, this could be garnered from my letter, that the commission had unanimously determined that it would produce 2 electoral lists each year. There are to have been qualifying dates of 30th April, which is to be effective from 1st May to 31st October, and the other 31st October to be effective from 1st November. Now, to get those lists, you would have had to have processes of continuous registration, claims and objections, and so on, to give you that list. The process for the list to begin on the 1st of May, which should have begun in December to January, never began, And when we met on the 22nd of January, when I asked why these things haven't begun, you're hearing that there was an order that had to be issued by the chairman and he was ill. And that's nonsense. The chairman can issue an order because all it does, he has to sign it. He didn't have to be present in the commission headquarters to sign it. And so nobody took anything. And when I asked, well, why can't we do it now? The CEO said it has been overtaken my time. Now this is the end of January. And that has been overtaken my time. When you would have had February, March, and April, which was 3 full months, to do whatever you had to do. No, you didn't take the Secretariat, and the Chief Elections Officer took no steps to begin a process of updating the list so that we could have a valid list from the 1st of May. Now he's saying that it is now, the CEO has communicated to me that at the current time and operational status, it will be a logistical impossibility for the Commission Secretariat to produce a list with a qualifying date of 30th April 2019, which could be available for the 1st of May. Now these people deliberately sit there, they deliberately not do what they're supposed to do, and then say it's now an impossibility. Now how can you take people at their word who are supposed to do a job? GECOM has over nearly 350 employees. I don't know what they're doing all this time. They're getting paid. And now it's a logistical impossibility to produce some list because they never even started. Now, take note that this updating of this list had nothing to do with elections. This was a normal program that GECOM would have had to do. And even though the 2019 work plan did include house-to-house registration, that was to come after this list had been updated. Because the reason for this is, we asked to go to Parliament that the list that used to be previously, after it was certified, would be valid for 3 months. We went to ask that the validity of the list, the life, would be extended to 6 months instead of 3, so we could have 2 lists, and every day of the year we would have a valid list. So any election that comes up, we can use the list. That was the reasoning behind this. They deliberately did not update the one that should have been updated for the 30th of April. They deliberately took no steps to do that, and now they want to tell you, well, we can't do it because it's logistically impossible. This is what people want to benefit from their own inaction and their own reasons, their own fault. Because all of this tells us that all these things were planned. This is a plan that is being carried out. And then he goes to the last paragraph on that page, and he says he has been assured by the Commission of National Registration, house-to-house registration. Based on that, the contemplated finish was February of 2020, because that is what Alexander kept saying, and that was the contemplated time. And now he's based on suggestions emanating from the Commission that any direct engagement with the sector, that I have been assured by the Commission of National Registration that a significant increase in the allocated resources for that exercise, so more than the 3-point-something billion they want, to increase it because they want to do an adjustment in the management arrangement for some procurement activities. The execution of the program could be restructured and completed 2 months earlier. So they don't only want to use what they had for that, they want extra for that, and then they want 3 point whatever billion for election. So all of this now, GECOM wants extra money on their 2019 budget so that they can finish the house-to-house registration 2 months earlier than was thing. This now takes us to December. And then he says, should this be achieved? Now, this is not, he says, should it be achieved? Because it depends on more money, it depends on all kinds of other things. Should it be achieved, most of the Commission's concerns of credibility and timelines, and indeed most stakeholders, would be addressed. So they're still not saying that they would have a completely credible list and they'll be able to satisfy stakeholders. He's just hedging his bets here. I would therefore urge you to support this by providing the required additional resources and appropriate guidance. This has to do with house-to-house registration now, not with the elections at all, because he mentioned elections before. Then he says, in consideration of all of the fulfillment of all these things, then he would proffer that the commission would be in a position to conduct elections no later than the late November 2019. So they're asking for like $3.5 plus another billion or $1.5 billion, nearly $4 billion, $5 billion more to finish house to house early so that they can hold an election till the end of this year. And they're calling that in the shortest possible time. And this word credible, I mean, I've addressed this at the level of the press so many times. All the elections we have had, GECOM never sets out to have elections that are not credible. We have had 2 local government elections just finished. Nobody has challenged it. So what? It's not credible? We had a list that was used, but they don't seem to care. Now, when we go in there and find this, and then to be told that today's meeting is a continuation of Thursday's, which means we're going, not discussing minutes or anything, we're going right in to the emotion that they was going to handle. So I said to him, Chair, that is one thing that I, got up to walk out of, and I'm not continuing from where we left off. This here added it, and then added to all of that, there was an invitation from the Carter Center, which center now has representatives in this country, one of whom happens to be a Carter, who I understand is the grandson of Jimmy Carter, asked to meet with GECOM on Tuesday the 18th at 10 a.m. or Wednesday, March 19th. The chairman, without even calling a commissioner, I don't know, he probably called the coalition commissioners, I'm not sure, but at the last meeting with the Carter Center, they did not arrive. None of the 3 coalition commissioners went to that meeting with the representatives of the Carter Center. And then he sends a reply to the center to say, this is what he says, March 20th, 2019 at 2:30 p.m. would be more in accord with my convenience. I hope the date and time accords with yours. Now that sounds more like the chairman. Now he took this decision all on his own without even asking, would that time be convenient to you? And these people have asked to meet with the chairman and commissioners. So all of this adds up to the fact that we have now a chairman who takes all these decisions on his own and wants to use us sitting there like some rubber stamp to just, confirm whatever decision he's making. I'm sorry, that's not why we are there. And so in a matter of less than 15 minutes, we had to leave the meeting again today.
Right. Having heard from my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, there are just a couple of things I'd like to reiterate. None of it is really news to you because these are issues that we have been dealing with at every single engagement with you over the past few weeks. This issue of house-to-house registration, as I said earlier on, is a matter of policy. It is not bound in law. In fact, we hear various versions of the necessity for house-to-house registration being bandied about by various persons in and out of the commission. I have never seen in excess of 4 years on the commission a document, a policy document, minutes, or any other document which says that house-to-house registration needs to be held at this or that interval. I have never seen that. And we have asked for it on more than one occasions and have not been furnished with that document. So at this stage, anything I hear about the necessity for house-to-house registration, I will disregard because it is not something that is founded in any law that I am aware of or in any policy that has been made available to me. What I am aware of is the necessity for the holding of national elections, which are regional and general elections, within 90 days of the successful passage of a no confidence motion, which we all know was on the 21st of December 2018. We also know that there has been no extension of the time within which that election ought to have been held, and as a consequence, the necessity for those elections stand as we are today. But all of this seems to be a culmination, or rather a part of the crescendo, to the delay in the holding of elections. First we heard it was funding. Now you hear it is the requirement for house-to-house election, house-to-house registration. None of these are real and credible reasons for the delay in the holding of elections. There are methods which are enshrined in law to refresh the list. There is no resort to any of those methods, except we are now going to a procedure that is grounded in some policy that possibly exists somewhere, but we've never seen it, so I can't give reliance to it. That is trumping the laws of this country. Now, Commissioner Shadegg touched on the misinformation that has been peddled in the media in relation to decisions taken by the Commission. But the quality of decisions as a whole, and all of that, have found themselves, and the more you read this letter that is dated today that was circulated earlier on, the more it borders on heresy. Paragraph 3 of the second page speaks to a unanimously approved work program. I dare say there has never been any work program that has been unanimously decided upon at that commission. Maybe it's at a meeting that is in somebody's dreams, but certainly not mine, and certainly not at a meeting at which I was present. So as a consequence for this, and you know, my colleagues also have spoken about their suspicions about this letter, about who the authors of this letter are, and from where it emanated. I will not give myself that liberty and open myself up perhaps to defamation lawsuits in relation to the origin of this letter. But I dare say, this certainly does not look like the work of the chairman, and I have my suspicion as to where it came from. That being said, I believe, like I said earlier on, this is a culmination or part of that crescendo of events that are geared directly and engineered. I don't need to say who has engineered it, because whoever derives the benefit or the obvious benefit from the delay in this process, and we've seen what the public reports and public sentiments expressed on this matter are, this is just another of that, in that path to delay. Thank you.
Gentleman, Julia Johnson. I don't know if you've ever ever had the opportunity to see whether or not the chairman writes replying to a president, or the chairman replying on behalf of the commission, he does so without consultation. Is there a precedence, or there is no precedence?
With this chairman, there is no precedent for anything. He does what he wants to do.
Are you aware?
In the recent past, to answer your question directly, Julie, in recent past, we have had, I believe this is the second letter, I'm sure of second, I'll be going on a limb to say third. This is the second correspondence that we are aware of that has emanated from the office of the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission to the president. The previous letter had to do with the vote that was taken by the three commissioners on the other side and the chairman to inform the president of certain things, including funding, etc. And as far as I can recall, this is the second letter.
So the point,
We didn't see the letters before.
Did you have an input in the first letter?
No.
But prior to the dispatch of that letter, there was a vote that the commission should inform the president that the commission is not in a position to hold the elections within the 90-day period or the 3-month period. We obviously, and it's a matter of public record, we voted against that, that line of action. So we were aware prior to the letter being dispatched of an intention by the commission, albeit we voted against that, that there was going to be a letter. This letter took us by complete surprise. When we appeared at the meeting today, this letter was sitting on our desk awaiting us.
The issue really, the difference is that in the letter which was previously sent out, was that it arose out of consultations and discussions and a decision of the commission, even though it did not accord with our position. In this case, this is a usurpation of the commission's function, that the serious matters which relate to funding, house-to-house registration, and dates, suggestions in respect of elections, there were no decisions of the commission, no discussion in depth.
No discussion at all.
At all, really, in respect of these matters from the commission.
I want to take it a step before that. Commissioner Ben spoke about no discussions. No information of the kind that is contained in this letter even came to us. And earlier on, we heard one of my colleagues at the commission said, well, it is likely that house-to-house will be done in a certain time, and elections can be held or be completed by February, and elections can be held in February. Even though I do not agree with that position, I heard that publicly. This information that seemed to emanate because the Commission of National Registration, who happens to be the same person as the Chief Elections Officer, his views are quoted here. The Chief Elections Officer is a creature of the Commission. He is a statutory officer of the Commission, and none of that information was brought to us at the Commission level. So, like Commissioner Shaddick said, I don't know what is the purpose of the Commission anymore if the Chief Election Officer is going to provide information to the Chairman, and the Chairman writes an external agency, in this case, no less a person than the President, without even bringing that information, much less not having a discussion, much less not coming to decisions. But that goes off as a matter of course. It's reprehensible.
Could I just ask you to comment on the fact that you're casting some doubts on the penmanship of this document, this letter. And you also said that when the work program...
The penmanship or the author?
The authorship.
The authorship.
Yeah, and then you also said that, you know, when the chairman did not have to be physically present to give the order for GECOM.
Well, he has to do sign on.
All he has to do is sign on.
Yeah.
Sign on.
And the former chairman did that when he was on leave.
That's why I'm asking, because I'm saying, you're saying that you're casting doubt whether he wrote
No,
this.
they're two completely different things. The language of our current chairman is not this language.
All right.
And my doubts are that he worded this letter. His signature is below it. I have no doubt that's his signature, and his signature is below it. I'm saying this is not his language. I don't know whose language it is, but it's not his. The thing about the order to be issued, that's a whole different story. That's a ceremonial thing. That an order is issued saying continuous registration from this period to this period, you know, and whatever. That's a whole different thing. All he has to do is put his signature to an order. And that order is usually drafted by law by the Chief Elections Officer.
I want to draw your attention to page 2, third paragraph, and which you pointed out with the word unanimously. Let's assume that the letter indeed came from the chairman. Are you saying that the chairman deliberately, factually misrepresented the GECOM's position to the president of the INS?
Yeah. If this says unanimously approved, then it is misrepresented.
Deliberately so.
Well, I don't know if
I think if I could attempt that, This appears to refer to the approval of the budget for 2019. And maybe an insertion of previously would have helped. It's badly written there. There's a suggestion here that there was a unanimous approval of a work program for 2019 by itself. I think this refers to the budget, how the budget was structured, and that we did agree on the budget for 2019.
Let me say something about our budget.
So what is?
When budget proposals are being sent in,
Yes,
for the
we
budget,
voted on
yeah,
the
the budget proposals, yes.
But the point I want to make
But
here,
the budget proposals did not result in the amount because it was lessened. The budget proposals also were based on a different kind of exercise, using computers and fingerprint scanners and so on to do registration and a whole host of other things. None of that is being looked at. So if we are talking about it should not have said unanimously approved work plan. It was a unanimously approved budget proposal to fund the work plan.
which went to the parliament.
It was the budget proposal that went.
But be that as it may, the significant thing is that once the no confidence motion was taken, GECOM's priorities were automatically changed
Had to be.
and overtaken. GECOM's work plans and work programs had to and have to accord with the constitutional imperatives. And which is why too, I think when the finance minister, Mr. Jordan, presented his budget in relation to GECOM, he said that the monies for GECOM would be handed over and would fall in line with GECOM's priorities, I think was the wording used. The priorities changed specifically and absolutely when the no confidence motion was passed and when elections had to be passed, had to be done and held within 90 days or within any additional days by resort to the parliament for additional time.
And please note
So
that
that
no budget
overtook.
proposal
That
would have
overtook.
envisaged elections after the
That
confidence
overtook.
motion. But the holding of elections is GECOM's responsibility. GECOM has two main things to do: register people and hold elections. They failed to do registration because they failed to do continuous registration and so on to update the list, and then they're now failing to hold elections when the parliament said that they should hold it. So therefore, GECOM is giving up its constitutional mandate.
Now that they've overlooked your functions, the constitutional functions.
You saw.
What are some of the options that you have as commissioners?
As commissioners, we are invited to a statutory meeting and we attend. Because if we don't attend the statutory meeting on the day it is called, then they can call that meeting for 2 days later and have that meeting with or without a quorum. So if a meeting is called on Tuesday and we don't go to the meeting, there is no quorum. Because for there to be a quorum, you have to have 2 government commissioners and 2 opposition commissioners together with the chairman. There can be no meeting without the chairman. So if, let's say, we don't attend the Tuesday's meeting, it means there is no quorum. That meeting, by law, then can be called on the Thursday. And whether or not there is a quorum, there can be decisions taken for that meeting. So our functions, our duties are to attend meetings when we are called. Because there is no way I would want these people to go sit there and take decisions and we are not there. However, when we go there, our views, we expect our views to be at least listened to and given some kind of credence and so on. Not for what we say to be just written off, and there is some plan that they have that they're going to follow regardless. And this is the impression we are getting. But our duties are to attend the meetings.
Outside of that, any other options that you have?
Well, to answer you very matter-of-factly, I will not want to telegraph the options that are available to us at this point because the element of surprise is necessary to give maximum effect to some of these options that are available to us.
Your comments on the recent findings in the ERC report, specifically when it comes to hiring practices and the difficulties they face in getting information.
I'm disappointed in the ERC's report in that they did not have any documents, any documentation to make a finding on hiring practices at GECOM. And for them to say there was no discrimination, or whatever it is, what was the word they used? That the practices are skewed or wrong. I don't think, what they should have said was that in the absence of information from the HR and so on, they could not make that determination. They didn't say that. They said they made a determination that, you know, there was no evidence of practices that were inimical to, you know, to rules. But otherwise, I think the ERC report, the report itself and the whole process was a very good one. They, you know, they were professional, it was professionally done, they did try to interview, you know, all the people that were involved, and I am very pleased that they have said what we are saying all the time, that the only qualified person that they had there for that position, qualified in terms of what was required according to the advertisement and everything, was Vishnu Prasad, who was ranked first, and who was passed over for no reason except the chairman said he found him shifty, and even though he said to the
Never spoke
that
to the man.
he had never spoken to the man, he had never seen him. So how do you come to the, you know, to the conclusion that a man is shifty if you never even spoke to him? Because he never gave any evidence of that. But I think that it is very clear from the report that they are satisfied that the hiring of Ms. Myers in place and instead of Mr. Vishnu Prasad was not something that should have been done.
Would you go back to the commission and ask them to revisit the hiring, or the candidate?
What, the ERC?
No. The novel report is out, and they say that it's not keeping with what should be.
I know, but there is one suggestion, a recommendation that I'll be making to the commission, which is that the interviewing and so on should probably be outsourced, and it shouldn't be done by, you know, by the in-house people, because I think then we'll have more credible results. Because what is happening there is like, you know, it's not what we would like. But that is a recommendation that I will make in the future.
In respect of its decision on the question of the thing, it is clear that the senior officers of the commission did not appear. In fact, Chairman Patterson, who made one appearance and promised to reappear with documents, to produce documents concerning the alleged shiftiness of Mr. Prasad, he never produced the documents, nor did he reappear. Ms. Myers, now the DCEO of GECOM, also did not appear, though requested to appear. And the Human Resources Manager, Ms. Crawford, also did not appear. The suggestion, the thought in my mind is that the two officers were told not to appear. But they were told not to appear. It could not be any other reason. It could not be any a reason when you're called by a constitutional agency not to appear on an important matter for which the information from these people was necessary. And I think the constitutional commissions would have to find ways either to subpoena or to penalize those persons who are required to appear and don't appear. It couldn't be that a constitutional agency, they put, the people are required to appear and then they don't appear. And it interferes with the quality of the results of the investigation in terms of determining matters which were put to that constitutional commission. The last point in terms of the discussions, the findings of the commission, they say the unavailability of key personnel did not allow for extensive deliberations to arrive at a more informed conclusion, which is the point I'm making. And so they said, as such, from the material placed before us, it cannot be said that there has been any evidence of deliberate hiring of Guyanese of one ethnicity rather than another. So the information wasn't brought to them. And the question they had to inquire into, one of the questions was whether the senior management was overwhelmingly of one ethnic group. And that information was not brought to make a finding on it. But it's easy to arrive at that conclusion. A little detective work or journalistic inquiry would answer that easily. But that said, I think that there was a great effort, though it took a long time by the investigating team from the ERC to produce this work, and that their intentions of the investigation, the purpose of the investigations was thwarted by the non-appearance of senior persons and the non-provision of information by GECOM to in the person of the chairman of GECOM, Justice Retired Patterson.
I would say that it's unfortunate that the HR manager, who is the person that drives the process of employment of people, because she sends out the ads, she collects and and gives lists and all of that. And that it's unfortunate that she didn't appear to give any kind of evidence.
She was obviously instructed not to appear.
I will not go so far as to say that, but I'm saying it's unfortunate.
Well, that's a
she did not
conclusion
appear.
I'm drawing.
I'm saying it's unfortunate that she didn't appear.
Okay.